from visionary director Gore Verbinski. Visionary is a word which here means has a vision inside their head and manages to execute it in a way that somewhat matches. It does not mean good. A Cure for Wellness, directed by Gore Verbinski, starring Dane DeHaan, Jason Isaacs, and Mia Goth. So, A Cure for Wellness, or as it could simply be known as Poison, is a movie about Dane DeHaan's character, who's a businessman, going to Switzerland in order to retrieve another businessman who went there of his own accord in order to avoid being prosecuted for embezzlement, I think. The other businessmen were not clear on what they had on Dane DeHaan's character, so I was never very clear on what the motivation was for him in the beginning. When he arrives at the hospital to pick up the guy, the staff is as creepy as possible to him, which makes him uncomfortable and jittery, and in his haste to escape, the film employs the deer cliche, which I don't remember who brought it up recently to me, but I was made aware of it, where, every time you need to leave a place, you end up hitting a deer or something similar. So he allegedly breaks his leg, and they keep him around as a patient for that, but shit gets weird, and the movie happens. So let's talk about it. First of all, this was clearly an attempt at being deep and metaphorical. Like, I noticed that there was a lot of juxtaposition between fire and water. And all of Dane DeHaan, whose character's name was Lockard, all of Lockard's memories of his father's suicide were drenched in water, rain falling, and the fact that his dad jumped off a bridge into a body of water. And then for the opposite side, the villains, their past is shrouded in fire. So both of them had sort of an adverse connection to the opposite element, and the villains, Jason Isaac and his staff at the hospital, they have a more positive connection to water. So I see kind of what they were trying to do there, but I'm not 14, and I'm not going to find that fun. The depth that they're going for is juvenile, in my opinion. And then the execution of the film is for a much more mature audience, but judging by the fact that there was maybe 2 other people in the theater with me, mature audiences are not going to be interested in this. And it wasn't just like I don't know if I could say philosophical for this, because there was really no depth to it at all, but it's not like that was the only problem. The water is somehow magical, and the magic seems to be connected to these eels that are living in it. Even though there was a scene where he mentioned leeches, which made me think, oh, there are many leeches. They're doing a micro-bleeding treatment, but none of that actually ever mattered at all. Like, the eels were being just as rejuvenated by the water as the people that the eels were going into, so I didn't understand what the even point was, other than to just be slightly creepy. The movie did do a really good job of being slightly creepy. It never quite got to the point where I was affected by it, but like, I could see what they were trying to do. I made a special note that the sound and the soundtrack were really good. The melodies from the music were really haunting, and the way the sound effects, because Lockard was on crutches for most of the movie, and it really helped drive that point across. It was trying to be a suspense type movie, but it refused to actually have a mystery to it. I called it about an hour into a 2.5 hour movie that Jason Isaac was immortal and that Mia Goth's character was his daughter. Much like in Allied, they didn't try to give you a second explanation for what's happening. Maybe they were really banking on people coming into this thinking it would be like Shutter Island and that he's crazy the whole time and that everything is just in his head. But I was not falling for that at all. I had the whole movie figured out less than halfway through it. Now, Dane DeHaan was okay. I don't have a wide variety of mediocre. Actually, mediocre was pretty good. Unless you take the word mediocre to be negative, he was pretty mediocre in this movie. Nothing stand out, but also he wasn't terrible. He had some situations that were pretty difficult to react to, I think. Like, how would you react if you were walked into a room and then you turned around and the door was gone? That was bugging me for a few minutes in there, because How would I react to that? Just sit down on the ground, I guess. Jason Isaacs was the standout of this movie. He was really good. He had a thick German accent that he held through the whole thing with no problems. He was almost exactly like the medic in Team Fortress 2. He was very easily the best part of this movie, and the only thing that really stopped it from tanking for me. The whole movie was just too predictable. So, like, a lot of it, I was kind of unfocused and having trouble keeping up with it. But it was a very pretty movie. When they call Gore Verbinski a visionary director, they mean he's got pretty shit in his head, and he's going to put it on a screen for you to look at. And I remember that because that was basically the reason why I loved Pirates of the Caribbean so much when I was a kid. It was just the way it looked. I didn't care about the characters. I also had a massive crush on Keira Knightley. That probably helped. But this was a very pretty movie. Switzerland is a very gorgeous country, you know? It's got earth porn everywhere you look. But the problem with a very pretty movie or a pretty anything is it gets boring. If you stare at a painting for 35 minutes straight, you're going to get kind of bored of it and you're going to want to look at something else. If this movie was really banking on the visuals carrying me through 2.5 hours, it was sorely mistaken. I mean, the movie even thought it had time for a dance number, and all that did was just drag it out. And then at the end, they're trying to have like a moral lesson, or so Dane DeHaan can look kind of cool, and it was just like, I have to get out of here. You're driving me crazy. I was actually literally yelling at the people on the screen to stop asking questions, just to move on with their lives. Overall, this movie was not great, and I cannot suggest it really to anybody. It's not a good movie. I'm tempted to call it Jupiter Ascending mixed with Lord of the Rings, because it has the Lord of the Rings like visuals to it, but the Jupiter Ascending stupidity. So anyway, bye.